What's up, guys? So I'm back with the VT500C. It's my buddy's motorcycle, and today I'm gonna see how far away is it from getting running potentially, if I'm missing any critical components that'll make it run. Since everything vehicle related revolves around spark, fuel, air, the first thing I'm gonna have to check is if it gets any spark. That's gonna be the most critical thing here. Since it's carbureted, the fuel will basically be drip down, but I'll test that after I find out if I have spark and compression. I'm not gonna do compression test, just do a quick finger over the hole type thing. And then I'll start figuring out the fuel issue. I just charged up the battery, so that should be good to go. And we will be able to determine how far away we are from running, potentially maybe even get it running in the next few minutes. That would be amazing. But let's start with the spark. All right, guys, so we're gonna test for spark. I've taken off the seat and the tank, so I have access to the whole top half. It looks like the previous owner was customizing this, so there's small filters here. I'm gonna take those off and put the stock airbox tube. It looks like the intake that would go from the carburetors to the airbox. I'm gonna put that back on after I'm done with this part. And I've already loosened the spark plug here. I'm gonna start up here. It's one of the easier ones to get access to. And pull it out to see if we have spark. The test is pretty easy. All we're gonna do is plug the spark plug to the boot, to the spark plug lead. So we're just gonna plug in the lead to the plug once the plug is out. And then I'm gonna ground the plug against the head or against the cylinder here to give me, well, it's a pretty gross looking plug. So I'm gonna ground it out here, not touch it, and I'm just gonna go ahead and turn the motor with the button to see if we have spark, and we should see a good spark right there. I don't know if you can see it. It's a very good spark. So I'm gonna take this out, set it down. I'll place my finger over this hole. This is how I'm gonna check compression. It should push back pretty hard, or at least pop my finger off on the compression stroke. Let's see. There it is. So we've got decent compression, at least on the front cylinder. I'm gonna test the same thing on the rear cylinder. It's on the other side. And if it's good to go, I'm gonna move on to fuel. So I've got spark, I've got compression, halfway confirmed. I'm gonna check the other side, and then we're gonna check the fuel. Okay, so I'm gonna test the same thing here I did on the other side. I just pulled the plug. I'm just gonna make sure it has spark since I'm here and I've got it this far. Let's see. And we do have spark over here. And then I'm gonna check compression again with my finger. And it's good. So we're gonna put it all back together and then go on to the next. So now that I've made sure that I have compression in both cylinders and spark in both cylinders, I can move to the next thing. I'm gonna take these little air filters off, and I'm gonna put the stock intake tube back on, because I would rather use the stock airbox than try to retune the carbs to this when the person who I'm fixing this for doesn't need aftermarket anything. He kind of wants it to be back to stock. I mean, the bars are even not stock, they're lower than normal, so these will probably have to be replaced at some point. But I'm gonna go ahead and take these off. So I'm gonna take these off and then see if I can get this airbox back in order, and then I'm gonna see if I can feed it some fuel to see if I can get this thing to crank and start. At least give me some kind of indication of whether or not it will start. And then we'll continue moving forward with the can it run thing. Or I just wanna get it fired up to make sure that I can get it to run. Once that's done, I'll go through, check all the fluids, and then start to see what else I'm gonna need to do to this thing to get it roadworthy. We're still a little ways away, but the fact that it's got compression and spark so far gives me hope that I'm not too far off, and I haven't gotten in over my head like I initially thought. Let's get going on this. All right, this is pretty easy. This wasn't really tightened very well. So here's one little air filter out, a little pod filter. I think it's kind of squeezed in there. So I got one off. And this one over here is like pretty wrecked. It's like they forced it in there. So this one's hopefully not gonna be too much of a pain to get out. Yeah, I think definitely had a little bit of damage in there. So that's out. All right, let me check these vacuum lines. I'm not sure where this vacuum line is supposed to go, but I'm pretty sure it's not supposed to just be floating. Okay, so now that I got the air cleaners off, little air filters, so once I figure out whether or not I have combustion by giving it a little bit of fuel, I'm gonna just drop some fuel in the carburetors here and see if I get combustion. And if I do, I am going to consider myself very fortunate and move forward to putting on the box and trying to get this fuel line sorted up, the fuel line in these vacuum lines that are not connected to anything. But let's get some gas in this. All right, so I'm gonna put a little splash of fuel in the carbs, just a little bit. Okay, there we go, just a little splash in each of them to see if it'll give me some combustion. So hopefully it gives me a little bit of combustion right now. Throttle's a little sticky. Hopefully that clears itself up. That's down the line, so we're not worried about the throttle right now. Let's see if we can get a little bit of combustion. So we've got combustion. That's a really good sign. It's really smoky in here now, just from that 2 seconds and a little backfire. But that's a good sign. So now that I know I've got spark compression and with fuel, it'll give me that little bit of running. Now I've got to figure out how to get the fuel to the carbs. All right, so there's a little piece of fuel line that I pulled off that needs to be replaced. So I'm gonna put that back in after I get this air box put back together, and then see if I can get this thing to accept fuel by itself without me having to pour it into the carburetors, because that would be great. All right, since I verified that it can run, now I just gotta make sure it runs safe. So I drained the oil. It was actually extremely overfilled. So I drained the oil. I'm going to put fresh new oil in it. And I double checked these hoses. So this is just the crankcase breather. I went ahead and routed this down along the frame so it goes straight down. And then I have a vacuum line that I need to have that goes from the petcock to actually one of the cylinders. And that's because it's got a little vacuum release on the petcock that allows the fuel to flow. It's like an emergency shutoff kind of thing. Maybe not so emergency, but it's like a shutoff, like an auto shutoff vacuum valve. So if there's no vacuum, it's not pumping gas, which is cool, but I don't know if it should be bypassed. I'm gonna do a little bit more research. I still have to put my factory air box on, and I have to replace this little chunk of fuel line that I pulled out earlier to make, actually it's because the old one was so bad. I'll show you. So here's the old fuel line, definitely not capable. Got some fresh fuel line that I'm gonna use for this. And it's only this one little chunk of fuel line that's bad. This is gonna go from the petcock, from the tank to the carburetor feed line. So it's gonna go just here. Short distance, maybe about 4 or 5 inches. So that'll be getting put on when I get this tank all put together. I'm gonna get this air box, the air intake tube installed. It wasn't installed when I started. So I'm gonna go ahead and get that on right now. The carbs look pretty clean. The slides inside let me show you. So if you can see here, the slides on the inside of the carbs are pretty free. That's on both carbs. So I don't think I'm gonna have too much of an issue with that. And if it ends up being that I need to, I will go back in and undo all this and I'll have to pull the carbs and rebuild them. But the way it started, the way they operate, as of now, they're pretty clean. I'm gonna go ahead and gamble and say that maybe they're okay. So I'm gonna go ahead, get started on this really quick. Okay, it looks like the right way to do this might be, let's see, will those go around that? So it might be to put this side on. Just gotta make sure all my clamps are facing outward so I can tighten them. Oh man, there's not really much space in here, if any at all. There we go. All right, ignore what I said. The best way to get this in is to fight. Oh man, this is extremely tight. Oh sweet, I got the base on. So this side is in. I'll tighten those in a second. See how far off I have on these carburetor. This boot over here is pretty malleable, like pretty flexible still, so it's still folding in a little bit on itself. Cool. Okay, so I got this side in. Now I got to get that side. All right, so this side actually popped in pretty well. Didn't fight too much. It's good. It's really good. So I'm going to. So now I'm just going to tighten up everything. Tighten up these little clamps. And this is very, very, very snug. If you can tell, there's like no clearance here between the frame rails. It might actually be touching frame rails on both sides, but it's in nice and tight. All right, so let me get this on and then I'm gonna move over to getting the tank on. And there's a couple things I want to do too before I try to start it again with the tank. But I think for now I'm gonna try to get the tank on, do the fuel line. Man, this seems pretty rusted. Well, the screws at least. Tighten this over here. Okay, so this one wasn't totally on. I was a little off. I had to loosen this ring a little bit more, so it was snug. But that was because that's as far as this ring was able to go, as tight as it was. Thought I loosened it, so that's a good learning opportunity. Don't assume you're all the way in. Double check your tautness or your tightness on your clamps before you install them. Okay, so that's in place. I'm gonna go ahead, put my oil drain back in, my drain plug. It looks like everything's out completely. So I'm gonna put my drain plug back in, put some oil in this motor, and then I'll get over to doing the fuel line in just a bit once I get oil in here and I get the tank repositioned. Let me get to this. You'll see here, this is the vacuum line I was talking about. That when it's got a little vacuum on this, the diaphragm opens up the valve inside so that way the fuel can come out. A little bit stripping right now, but I think that's more because I was messing with it earlier. There we go. Okay, so I'll show you really quickly where this vacuum line goes. It just goes right here, right into the cylinder. Let's see if I just hook it up right now. Plenty of length, okay. And then my fuel line will go from here to, there's a little line back there. So I'm gonna get that going. Get the oil in the motor, and then I'll try to crank it over. All right, so I looked online and it says that the VT500C should take a little over 2 quarts. So there's 2 quarts. Let me see where I'm at on the dipstick now. Ooh, just touching it at the low line. Let me go grab another quart. All right, so I'm not gonna add a whole bunch, just a little bit. Maybe that much. We'll see if that's enough. All right, cool. Now we're measuring right, just about halfway up on the dipstick. I'll just add a little dab more. But like I said, when I checked the oil right before I drained it, this thing was like up to here, like way overfilled. So whether the oil was good or not was irrelevant. It had to come out just so I could get it to the right fill level. Perfect. Just a little below the top. All right, so turn my fuel on. There we go. All right, so fuel on, ignition on. Let's see how this runs. Let me put some more gas in this thing. I just put a little bit, didn't think about how low it was, but it's probably pretty low. Let's see, I'll go ahead and start with that. That should be pretty good. Let's try this again. This is awesome. It's got the ugly cut pipes, but this thing sounds pretty good for a little. I'm gonna have to tune some carbs. Man, I'm excited. Everybody outside of this garage probably hates me right now. This thing is super loud. I'm sure my wife and kids are gonna love being woken up by the super loud popping of the backfiring. The dog's probably going crazy. The neighbors are probably cursing me right now, but I'm excited. So all of that is irrelevant right now. Super excited. Got my friend's bike running. First try. And tomorrow's the real test to see, beyond starting and idling, will it run? Will it drive me up the street? And I still have to address, like, there's wires and stuff that are cut, clipped. The tail light works. I don't know about any of the brake lights. I don't think the rear brake works. I'm gonna have to change that, probably change this rear suspension. And I can't wait to get back on this thing to finish it up. Man, got the spark, got the fuel, got the air, everything's going good. We got good compression. Carbs might need a little tuning. Maybe everything just needs to be flushed and just needs to be run a little bit. I think this thing's been sitting for years without being run, and people are just fiddling with it, as evidenced by these amazingly, horribly cut wires back here. But there's light. There's light at the end of the tunnel. Thanks for watching. I'm really excited about getting it this far. Stay tuned. Next video will be me riding this thing. I will be riding this and taking it to my friend. Thank you for your support. I really appreciate all of you and can't wait to ride this thing. Can't wait. Thanks.